launch of Bob Ross,
right?
it's all about the
It's
process.
little bitty
Happy
things.
trees. Happy trees. You know what I learned about Bob Ross is there's an internet rumor that he was secretly a mass murderer and that his paintings are where the bodies are buried.
It wouldn't surprise me terribly.
I
So
learned that because my fourth grader, who's 10 years old, watches way too much YouTube. So once he told me that, that was the take the iPad away for a while moment.
excellent. For the sake of recording, I'm going to do an official intro now. So here we go. Welcome and hello everyone to Busy Webinar. This is our monthly update on everything that you need to know about marketing, inbound, and of course our favorite HubSpot. And I'm super excited to have Alex Desnoyers here from Boston. He actually delivered a inbound overview live this morning with our HubSpot user group. So if you don't know about HubSpot user groups, just search for the Twin Cities Hug and be sure to join that for in-person events. And what we're going to hear today are the more than 200 amazing things that HubSpot announced at Inbound. I've heard this a little bit, and now this is a encore presentation for the rest of us. And we have all kinds of attendees here. For the attendees, please feel free to chat in your questions, or you can use the Q&A tool. We also have all of the questions that you submitted in advance, and Alex has those at the ready. And I think we're all set. So I'm just going to keep track. Trigvy's going to keep track of questions as well. But for everyone that's here, thank you so much. And this is intended to be for you and for your time. So don't be shy about asking those questions. Without further ado, it's live from Boston in person, our
Yay!
best and favorite person in HubSpot, Alex Desnoyers. Alex.
Boy, don't I feel like a celebrity. Thanks for having me, everybody, and thanks for joining. Honestly, it's good to see some familiar faces, some new faces, live from the Twin Cities. It's Wednesday afternoon. Good to be here, guys. So, like Dave mentioned, there have been a lot of updates, right? A lot of people are quoting that 200 plus number that the product team mentioned. Some of those are things that were sort of out in the public or in private beta in a couple of the weeks and months leading up to Inbound, but certainly Inbound was the moment to sort of pause and celebrate. And the reality is it's very exciting. The other part of the reality is it's a little bit overwhelming. So we're here to kind of unpack that a little bit, get into it, talk about what you should be paying attention to, demystify a couple things. But the first thing to mention is that we're not going to cover every single one of those updates because we would need probably an 11-hour webinar. But today we're really going to get into the meat of some of our favorite updates, the things that are going to help you today immediately. A lot of this stuff is live, some of it's in beta. We'll try to clarify some of those things along the way. So thanks for being here, everybody, and let's get into it. So we're going to kick it off by diving into the Marketing Hub, followed up by the Content Hub, and then Breeze. A lot of you submitted some really great questions about just what's going on with all this AI stuff. We're absolutely going to get to it. You'll notice that some AI things get peppered in along the way, right? So there are AI features in the Marketing Hub and the Content Hub, but Breeze is the newest AI category with HubSpot. In a lot of ways, it kind of stands alone. We'll kind of break down the difference between Breeze Intelligence and co-pilots and agents. Oh my, all this stuff that Dharmesh has really gotten us fired up about. I also just want to caveat, like, obviously there are updates for other hubs that were part of Inbound. And again, we just only have a limited time. So we want to make sure we focus on those things. Throw your questions in the chat wherever you are. We'll do our best to get to them today. And also just know that if it feels a little bit overwhelming, you're not alone. That's why we're here, looking forward to unpacking it. Also, the reality is that like you don't always have to wait for an awesome webinar like this to start to learn about more of this stuff. This is evergreen content the HubSpot marketing team is deploying all the time. So Inbound has sort of become known as the quote unquote fall spotlight, right? We kind of do that twice a year in the spring and the fall. So if you go to hubspot.com/spotlight, you can look at that webpage. There's a lot of really great sort of summary content there. You get to hear directly from, Andy Petrie, the CPO. You get to hear from various product managers, really cool stuff. And then hubspot.com/new, updated a bit more frequently. You can also subscribe to updates there too. So if you haven't already, I would definitely check those out. as I mentioned, I'm going to mention a few betas today, right? And you see here in the screenshot 200 plus product updates, as Dave mentioned before. So you may be asking yourself, okay, great. I'm very excited about this cool thing that Trigvi and Dave and Alex are talking about today. How do I participate? If you click in the top right corner of the portal that you're in at HubSpot, go to the product update section, and there you will see all of the available product updates depending on your subscriptions. So we'll call out on these slides like what's available to whom and where. You know, HubSpot's got various hubs and tiers and SKUs, so we'll do our best to make that clear for you all as well. But just wanted to say you could literally live on this webinar opt into some of these betas and start using them today.
So Alex, as
let's
I'm
do it.
looking at this on the screen, you go to the upper right-hand corner where your name is, and then you click, like in this case, biglitits.net in the upper right corner, and then it's available under that product updates.
Bingo.
Okay, cool.
The upper right-hand corner, all the way in the tippy top right, you'll see the name of your company or the name of your portal. If you click that, and you're good to go. All right, well, as they say, let's dive in. So first on the list is the trusty Marketing Hub. It's where HubSpot got its start, and so it's where we're going to start today. Kind of as a standalone piece, I think some of you, if you've been paying attention to a lot of our other product updates this year, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a movement towards like homes and workspaces and things like that. I think the reality is that the platform has gotten pretty expansive and there's a lot of things that you can do within it. And so when we think about the user experience, it's really helpful to try to cut down on how many tabs you have open and how many different tasks, and you're just zooming around everywhere and I got to check this and check that. So our goal here is to create a home for marketers, aptly named, right? You'll notice just some of the information on the slide down at the bottom there in orange. It'll tell you a little bit about like who this is available to and whether it's fully live or in public beta. So for example, the home for marketers is available to Marketing Hub Pro and Marketing Hub Enterprise customers and is in public beta. So as we showed on the previous slide, you can opt into that today if you are a Marketing Pro or Enterprise customer. And so if you think about how do I start my day as a marketer inside of HubSpot? I want to say, what tasks do I have to do today? Is there any content that needs my approval before we take it live? Is there anything on the social calendar for today that I want to be aware of that I want to double check? So again, it's aptly named. It's a home for marketers. I kind of consider it a home base. Where do I start my day before we go forth and conquer? So that's our first sort of standalone update that I thought was really interesting coming out of Inbound. And now we're going to get a little bit deeper into the weeds, starting with a category in and of itself, HubSpot Forms. There's several updates here for Forms. If you think back a couple months ago, the product team launched this idea of like field validation, and it was an internal piece of functionality, right? So think about if I have a property on a deal record where my sales reps are putting in, like a PO number, right? And that is a type of number that has specific rules, right? It needs to be a number, namely, right? And so that was a great update for our users inside the HubSpot portal. What this is taking is let's put that external so that we have those same rules and that same ability to validate in our forms, right? People always say the eyes are the window to the soul. Well, the form is the window into your database, and it's where a lot of our leads come through. It's also where a lot of bad data comes through. So being able to set some basic rules and guardrails there so that when people are filling out your forms, they are actually giving you good and formatted information so that we can do the things that we need to do on the inside of the CRM. So exciting little update there. And I think, honestly, a lot of these things are things that we as consumers should be familiar with, right? Like we've all filled out those forms and it's like, oh, sorry, that's not a valid email address. You have to put an @ symbol in there, or, oh, actually, that's not a letter, numbers only. So this should be familiar stuff. And the way I like to think about it is as we experience the rest of the internet evolve, HubSpot is not immune to that. We have to have the same level of functionality as everybody else. So excited to see us catching up in that regard. Getting deeper into the weeds, this is where things start to get more fun because there are a lot of complex scenarios for your businesses. And if you really want to be leveraging HubSpot to run your business effectively, we need to account for all those scenarios. So having conditional logic in forms, we sort of had a version of that before, but candidly, I'll be the first to admit it was a little bit shallow, right? There was only so deep we could go in terms of the amount of dynamic rules we could put in place to account for those scenarios. So product team is really doubled down here. We're trying to make this a more sophisticated application and really want to make it so that, like, again, that form is that front end window between your anonymous visitor and having them actually become a lead in your system. And so we want to be able to have their experience reduce as much friction as possible, allow them to actually fill out their forms, get what they need, really make their experience, their first experience with us as easy as possible, and everyone's happier for it. Cruising right along, we also got multi-step forms. Some people may be familiar with calling it like paginated forms, but the idea is the same. When you have a lot of questions you want to ask, it can be really daunting if you're the person on the other end trying to fill that in. And so breaking it up into steps, separate pages, is a really helpful way. I've certainly experienced a lot more of that in my own personal use. And if you're a Service Hub customer, you may be familiar with this. We have a very similar piece of functionality for our custom surveys. And so we're just completing the sweep and coming around and saying, hey, if I can do that over here, I wish I could do that over there. Really important for our Marketing Hub customers to do the same. Also notice this is available down to the starter level. So really great to see the product team launching things all across the different hubs and all across the different tiers. Lots of really helpful stuff. This is probably my favorite when it comes to the forms updates. Conditional redirects, right? We want to be able to be nimble on our feet with people interacting our forms. And so based on what you tell us, right? Like what options you select in the dropdown, what information you're giving us in the form that we're asking you for, we might want to send you to a different destination, right? If there's a really warm lead, I might want to send them directly to Dave or Trigvi to have them book a meeting with them right away. Based on what they've told us in the forum, they're super qualified, they're ready to go. Let's get them over to the right person at the right time. Not every form fill is the same. So we want to have that dynamic experience. So what happens as soon as they press submit is tailored to what we expect for their fit for our business. And if you're one of those folks who's been charged with building forms in HubSpot and adding them to the landing pages and customizing that experience, I'll be the first to admit there have been times where it's been kind of frustrating. Brand consistency and brand identity is so important. And so being able to have the proper styling and customize the look and feel of a form is just as important as any other piece of content or any other piece of your website. So the team has really doubled down on trying to make that a more controllable experience for you so you can really achieve that consistency you're looking for. And again, that's like in a global capacity, so you can sort of set those standards so that when your team is creating new forms, they don't have to remember what exactly was the color code for that, or we want to set our teams up for success so that they can launch new assets fast without compromising on quality.
Alex, let me interject real quickly. And for those of you
Please.
who are on the webinar with us, if you have questions, feel free and put them in the chat pane. I just realizing that I was chatting a whole bunch of stuff to Dave and not to everyone, encouraging them to share. So feel free, and if you guys want to ask us questions, we'll do our best to make sure they get answered.
Trigby's used to only talking to Dave, so it's tough when we get him out amongst the wild.
It's weird. Not you're here. It's a whole thing.
All right. I don't know if anyone had any bets on how many slides it was going to take for us to start talking about AI, but here we are, slide 14, AI-powered gibberish, spam detection, and form submission. So that's a whole lot of words. What does that really mean? I think we've all been there where you get a lead, someone filled out the form, you run over and you look at it, and it's junk. One of the ways that's often junk is, it looks like a cat was crawling across the keyboard when they were entering their name into the field. Some people will do that just to try to cut to the chase and say, oh, I don't care, I need to submit this form. But it's also often a very common sign of just clear spam, right? So whether it's a human spamming you or some sort of, program doing that, our AI models are starting to get smarter at being able to detect that and basically say, hey, let's put this over here for a human to review because we're pretty sure this is spam. Tell us what you want to do with that. Spam is the bane of a lot of marketers' existence, especially when it comes to forms. So excited to see the product team take a couple more steps here. We introduced the spam tool kind of quietly a couple months back. And I think part of the reason was we were still pretty early on the number of use cases we were able to detect. So excited to see some momentum here. The more we can cut off the bad data at the pass, the better off you all are. Form submissions, that's how we get a lot of data into the system, and that's where a lot of bad data comes from too. So excited about that update as well. Last but certainly not least for forms, have you ever just wanted to delete a form submission? I think for me, all the time, right?
Amen. Yeah.
Yes,
First use
please.
case is
Junk comes in.
junk.
Oh man.
Like there's just a bunch of junk, and you're like, you know what? Someone in, some bot in Iceland was spamming our forms at 3 in the morning trying to get us to buy Bitcoin, and it's just making all our analytics look terrible. Well, terrible in the sense that like, oh, I thought we were getting a spike in leads, but it turns out it was a spam attack. So that's one use case where you can kind of clean up the spam and sort of get back to a more true representation of your form analytics. The other one too is like you might want to be testing how your forms are working. Is the workflow that fires in the background, sending the follow-up email okay? Does everything look good, feel good? And a lot of people have hesitated from testing their forms in the past because they don't want to distort the analytics. So it's a very simple but effective update, your ability to be in control of your data even more. Sometimes you just got to delete, and we're happy to give you the power to do so. So lots of form stuff. Happy to see it. I know a lot of longtime HubSpot users have had some of these updates high on their wish list. Really excited to see some of these things come to fruition. Now, I know a couple people in the questions when they were registering for this webinar asked about social tools, so really excited to run through a few of those next. Social inbox monitoring improvements. You'll notice a trend with some of these updates I just want to call out. It's that like not all of these updates are the same. Some of them are whole brand new things, right? We'll get to the Breeze stuff in a little bit, but like also one of the things I really appreciate about this product team is they're kind of never done improving things that have been around for a while. I remember when I first started at HubSpot, the social tools very limited. And there's been some steady progress over the years. Some of it are down to just the limitations to what we have as far as being able to connect to these other social networks and what APIs are available. But the other part of it too is just like always trying to reduce friction and make the user experience better. So think about this as like unifying the inbox. I want to be able to do the things I need to do and monitor our performance on these really important channels for our business in one space. And so this is a bit of a UX improvement in some ways, but also there's some new functionality here too, right? So there's unified inbox, the ability to view and reply to comments on the posts you've already published, right? So you're getting that engagement, and sometimes time is of the essence there, being able to reply to comments and keep that conversation going, that real community aspect to social. And then also for our folks on Marketing Hub Enterprise, there's some cool new YouTube capability that's coming into focus here. So that's also part of the experience. So again, the social inbox overall available to Marketing Pro customers. It's just that little YouTube piece that is currently today available to our enterprise customers. One thing I'll allude to a few other times in this speech, but just to give Trigvi credit, a great question he asked this morning was, does the product team ever like trickle things down from the enterprise tier to the pro tier? And is this maybe one of those? And the answer to the first part is absolutely. If you've been around HubSpot long enough, I think there's a really strong track record of always looking to find balance between the different tiers, right? Like who needs this firepower here and how much of this tool should be able to have access there. Whether or not this particular one will go down over time, who's to say, but we certainly have a strong track record of that. And what I will say for any of the people listening here is if you are a HubSpot customer and you are regularly talking to your customer success manager or your sales rep, or you spend time in the community forums or, participating in Hug events, anytime you're participating in a conversation with a HubSpot employee, don't be afraid to give that kind of feedback, because honestly, most of the updates that we've had here and the ones we're going to keep talking about come directly from customer feedback. I have seen several cases where I can draw a string directly from a particular feedback forum all the way to a product update. Sometimes it takes longer than we'd like, but genuinely,
That's
you're
actually a
not screaming into
HubSpot.
the void.
That's actually a HubSpot requirement, isn't it, Alex? Like every quarter that the new product team has to release something that was an idea of somebody else's.
Yeah, they have to release something that specifically was Trigvy's idea. No.
Well, I've
You're right.
actually been I've actually had the privilege of having one of my ideas implemented, so that's how I know that that's true. But
Yeah.
they are required to listen to their customers is the larger point.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've had conversations with PMs and it kind of confirms that it is not lip service. They do actually read every single piece of feedback that we get. So when you, again, like if you're talking to your CSM or you're, talking to someone on the support team and you say, you know what, this is a roadblock, that's the term we use for these things commonly inside the walls of HubSpot, and they say I'm going to file a roadblock, that means that is basically like a direct piece of communication that goes straight to the product team, and they are required to read every single one of those, and they publish things in the community forums all the time where you can see like, hey, this idea has been around for a while, and because enough people raised their voices and told us they want it, we started to pay attention, and it's thanks to great people in our community that make the product better. Awesome. So if we think about the next phase of the social tool, I think like the inbox insights is a great piece. And this is also a really good category of where we're starting to see a lot of the AI stuff is like, how does it help me take some of the tedium out of my job, right? So if I'm on the marketing team and I'm responsible for our social channels, right? I'm always looking for ways to analyze and improve what we're doing, right? So how do I find those insights? In the past, that might mean I had to block off a half of a working day, get an Excel spreadsheet out. I'm pulling reports over from here and I'm looking for info over there, and I'm trying to copy and paste comments, and it's a bit of a nightmare. And so one of the things that AI is really starting to help us do is basically just say, hey, here's some insights that you might want to pay attention to. And our ability to work through all that information, humans are really good at some things, and one things we're not really good at is processing a ton of information fast, right? So I think this is a sweet spot that we're starting to find with some of our AI features is, how about we help you kind of analyze some of the things that you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into pulling all that data in, and we're going to make some recommendations. And I said this morning, I put an emphasis. These are recommendations, right? So like this is a good way to get a gut check, right? Like you may get some insights that you might never have found. It may be a source of validation, right? I've seen that as a really good talking point with AI where it's like, I want a gut check that's data based, something to compare my thoughts to. And so this is one of those examples. Excited to see that come out. You're putting a lot of work in your social channels. Let's see how it's going and find ways to improve. And as alluded to before, right, publishing YouTube content, really exciting. Again, this is specifically for enterprise. And I just want to call out one little thing here. This is maybe getting a little bit into the weeds on how the product team works, but you notice that this doesn't say beta or live, it says rolling out. Sometimes you'll see this when our team is transitioning something from a public beta to going fully live. They'll do it in a phased approach. So it may be that you want to do 20% of all customers in the first week, and then 40, and then 60, and then 80, and then 100. So they'll kind of do that in those chunks to monitor how things are going, just in case there's any hiccups along the way. So when you see something is marked as rolling out, that may mean that if you have a portal that's eligible, as in this case, you have Marketing Hub Enterprise, that it may or may not already be active in your portal. And if not yet, it will be very soon. So the team's never sleeping. This stuff is always coming. One day you may wake up and you have a brand new feature in your portal, and boy, we're excited to dig into it. Last but not least, on the social front, back down to the pro level, fully live Instagram stories support. When I think about my own life as a consumer and my own interaction with social media, in my mind at this point, in a lot of ways, like Instagram is stories, right?
Mhm.
Stories are how a lot of brands communicate. It's, the video aspect of the medium. It's very playful and experimental, and it's fun. And so being able to actually upload videos to your Instagram stories from within HubSpot, what a big unlock. Really great addition to the social tool to round out these updates from Inbound.
And this is one of those that was really well received this morning. There was actually a round of applause that went around the room. Boy, it's hard to do like via, well, it was impossible to do it via HubSpot. So you would have to publish something and then make a story on your mobile device and now it's all just there. That's so cool.
Yeah, big update, big a piece of efficiency. Really excited to see it. All right, so another one that you may be thinking, doesn't HubSpot already have that? How is this different? We're going to dive into this one because, in my opinion, I think this is possibly the biggest Marketing Hub update coming out of Inbound. So, first and foremost, as I just alluded to, yes, HubSpot has had for quite some time a lead scoring capability, let's say. The reality is it has been hard to find and limited in what you can do with it. This update is going to address both of those issues, right? So improving the UI and the UX. This is going to have its own dedicated app in the navigation, easy to find, easy to use. The other thing is it's just going to go a bit deeper into what we can do. Things like I want to be able to set a decay behavior so that if someone is showing a lot of positive intent, but then as the weeks go by, maybe that lead is not so hot anymore. Just because someone visited your pricing page is a big difference between they visited it 5 minutes ago and 5 months ago, right? So building in decay behaviors, setting a lot of standards for, what are the thresholds? What do we consider a warm versus hot versus cold lead? There's a lot of really cool stuff here, but I think probably the biggest difference is we're also allowing you to do engagement scores versus fit scores. I am of the opinion that this is one of those like timeless debates. You'll always find people that have strong opinions about should they be separate, should they be combined. We're going to allow you to have it either way, right? And I think it's important to think about like someone could be on paper like the perfect ICP for your business. They check all the demographic or firmographic boxes, whatever. But if they've never been to your website or never opened one of your emails, right? Like that tells a different story. The inverse is true too. There could be someone who is basically banging down your door, requesting a quote, looking at your pricing page daily, reading all your blogs. But if they are not in the right market, not in the right industry, not of the right size to be able to afford your service or your product, like that's a bummer, man. So being able to separate those two things, I think, is really important. As I mentioned too, right, there's, again, this is sort of two pieces of it, and you may be looking at this and thinking, how is lead scoring in beta, but lead scoring thresholds live? This is just one of those things where like the tool itself is technically in beta, and then we launch these sort of supporting betas that are adding additional pieces and sort of rounding out some of the sharp edges. So this would be a good example of like overall lead scoring is technically still in public beta, but the capability of the beta when we first went into beta is now changed because we're adding more pieces to the beta. I probably just made that more confusing, but rest assured, if you are participating in the beta, you can take advantage of score thresholds. Lastly, I think this is maybe my favorite part about it. The reality with our existing lead scoring functionality was it just like lived inside of a property. And that's cool because you can reference it in lists and workflows and things like that. And that's going to be the same case here, right? So if you already set up one, we're not taking it away. If you start using the new lead scoring tool, it'll have the same sort of output in the sense that like you can create a custom property that you want to store that in. So I imagine a world where you create a fit score and an engagement score for your company. And now you have two separate properties where you can track those and compare and contrast. But again, if I'm a user of the portal, right? If I'm a sales rep and supposedly marketing has been sending me leads, I want to see what's going on with the history of those leads, right? And so this gives you the full context without having to kind of guess or, I see someone who's a hot lead, but as I joked about before, oh, the reason they were so hot was because they did visit our pricing page, but that was 5 months ago. So having that full 360 view of the lead is really important. And I think a great update that lives right on the record, super easy for you to see. Within a matter of seconds, you can kind of get soup to nuts history of what's going on with that lead with your business and decide, are they really hot or are they not? What should I do about it? All right, I know everyone's favorite thing in the world is reporting in HubSpot.
Yay, reporting! Let's do it.
We're getting into it, baby. All right, I'm only half joking because I know sometimes reporting is frustrating. Oftentimes, the reason reporting is frustrating is because your boss is asking you difficult questions and you're hoping to justify the ROI of work, and we're here to hopefully make that easier. First on the tour is the campaigns tool ROI. I think, I made some jokes about this earlier. Some of our tools as much as I bleed orange, they've needed a little TLC. The campaigns tool is one of them. Excited to see some more updates here because there is one pure question that we always need to prove as marketers, and what is the ROI? So hopefully this helps make that a lot easier for you. Building that into the tool so it like actually does some real calculation for you, but also we've introduced some settings in the back end that allow you to sort of define like how you actually want to do it, right? So it's like, is this revenue from closed won deals or just the associated deal value? Like, how are we actually measuring ROI? You know, each business is a little different in terms of how they define their opportunity stages and how they define some of these things. So I wanted to give you some flexibility along the way. And that's baked right into the campaigns tool. So, you know, if you're a marketer and you're leaning into that tool regularly, we wanted to put the reporting where you are doing the work so you can see that day to day. But sometimes we are looking for something a little bit different or a way to customize it a little bit more. So I think this is also really good news. If you've been paying attention over the last 6 to 12 months, we've been slowly but surely adding more and more data sources to the customer report builder. And that's just more data for you to play with. So in the same vein that we're making ROI reporting better, what I would say like natively in the campaigns tool, we also just want to give you that data to play with if you have other things you want to do with it. Maybe you want to slice and dice it a little bit differently. Maybe your goal is just, I would prefer that this report be on a dashboard rather than just in the campaigns tool. Like whatever, the world's your oyster. We're just trying to make our ability to prove our ROI and justify our existence a lot better. We want you to show the great work you've been doing. Last on the reporting front, at least as far as the slide deck is concerned, obviously there's always improvements coming out, but it has also been a sore point. You know, we were talking about the forums earlier. People have given us a lot of feedback, and we've been working hard to implement that feedback. Like, what happens when I skip stages or my reps skip stages and it throws off all the conversion metrics? So we're allowing you to make that optional. So when you build those funnel reports, you actually get the metrics you need without putting guardrails in front of your reps. You know, that's another one of those age-old debates. It's like, I think because of the reporting limitations, I have to put strict rules in place for my reps. But the reality is, you know, sometimes they just need to move a deal along. They just need to move a life cycle stage along. And, you know, now you can have it both ways. So we're building optionality into the funnel report builder to make your life easier so you can do what you need to do without compromising your data. All right, everyone's favorite category, more. This is a little bit of the catch-all. Like I said, we're not going to get to all 200 plus, but there were a couple here I couldn't leave out. I just thought were really impactful and interesting on the Marketing Hub front. Smart content for embedded CTAs. If you've been around for a while, you may be thinking, didn't we already have that? The long story short is every once in a while, we need to sort of rebuild an old part of the platform. And the CTA tools was getting a little dusty and crusty. So we rebuilt and relaunched like this new version of the CTAs tool. And now we're kind of completing the swing on that and saying, okay, we're bringing the smart content back. You can finally use that in your CTAs. Really excited for you folks to take advantage of that. It's been a hotly requested topic in the community forums, and we are back, baby. Couple more on the marketing front. This, I think like maybe there's a bit of a theme here that you guys are noticing, but like being able to create preference page rules, I think is a really good, just like minute example of every part of the customer journey matters and we want it to be personalized. I used to joke with my customers back in the day when they had gripes about our, you know, unsubscribe page, their preference page, where it's like, well, if they're already going to unsubscribe, do you really care if your branding is perfect? And the reality is we do, right? And we also want their experience to be smooth because they may not just be opting out. They may be opting into different things or changing their subscription preferences. So maybe you want to only show people options based on the language. Maybe you only want to show certain options based on the audience that they're a part of. So being able to set rules for what people see when they go to change their subscription preferences. Everyone deserves to have a tailored experience. We're trying to make it easier for you to do that everywhere. A super specific one here, but again, I think it like the details matter. The devil's in the details here. There are plenty of times where, we don't want you to be left stranded. So HubSpot will often create like a default or like a backup domain, right? So sometimes you may say, what is like HS dash sites? Like, what is that? But now we're gonna give you the option basically to just say, hey, our email marketing domain, which is a big part of our brand identity, and if you've set up your marketing email in HubSpot, you know you need to get that connected. So might as well have the preference page hosted on the same domain, right? Keep that consistency, keep that brand identity everywhere on the screen is an opportunity to continue the impression you're making on your customers. So why not here as well? One more, I promise, before we launch into the Content Hub. Google enhanced conversions. This is a big deal, in my opinion. Anyone who spent any amount of time really focusing on PPC, there is a lot of opportunity to improve and optimize, but we are only so powerful as the data we are able to share back and forth between these systems. I think it's a really big update, right? Tools like Google Ads are so capable and smart, but if only we can provide them with the best data possible about what's happening in HubSpot, then we can really enhance our ability to convert on these ads that we're spending money on. So really excited to see that. HubSpot's partnership with Google is awesome. Really excited to see us continue to develop one of the oldest integrations that we've had.
And Alex, on that one, is that going to help smooth out the disconnect between what HubSpot reports as the amount of clicks and visits that you get versus what Google tells you?
I think yes and no. I think a good way to look at it is it sort of mentions here in the use cases that like as the like SEO landscape and honestly like the privacy and cookie policy landscape has been changing, it can be kind of hard to keep track of everything that's actually happening. And a big part of it is like how secure is the data that we're passing back and forth between these platforms. So we're giving end users more control over what we are allowed to collect about them. And it's also been harder to share that information with these networks.
Sure.
So mostly what this is doing is kind of saying like, hey, we have found a safer way to actually pass that verifiable information from HubSpot over to Google to help Google get better at optimizing the ads that you're spending money on.
Got it. Thanks.
Great question. All right, we spent a lot of time on the Marketing Hub, but I think for good reason. We're going to make sure we get through the Content Hub, and don't worry, we still got time for Breeze. Lots of things going on with the Content Hub. And if you've been paying attention, like you might be thinking, didn't we just do this like 3 months
Before
ago?
Alex gets started on this, I just want to remind everybody, if you see on the bottom, he's got listed where with each what level each update has associated with it. So as you're trying to figure out, hey, is this something that I have already? That's your best indicator. But as he said, chances are good that in time that it's going to drip down to lower levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is a good example. We'll get to it in a slide here too, but there's been some really great stuff on the Content Hub side, right? Formerly known as the CMS Hub that has trickled down. Really excited about that. This podcast thing is really, really fascinating. I think I've talked to so many customers who've been like, I feel like I need to launch a podcast, but I don't really know how, or do I have the resources, or what can I do? This ability to basically like help you generate all of the nuts and bolts of a podcast with very minimal input, super cool stuff. And again, we're starting to see some of the AI stuff underneath. It's just like I want to be able to quickly produce something without, hurting the quality of what I'm producing, right? We oftentimes talk about the quality and quantity divide. Like, how about if you could still do it fast and quickly without compromising on quality? And I think that's a big theme we'll see with a lot of the Content Hub stuff. We also just launched like a whole new content type, right? So like case studies, super important. HubSpot, certainly in our own marketing, have leaned really heavily into case studies. It's a very powerful piece of content. And the idea here again being like, all right, we could just create a new type of content and let you go build it in the way you've been doing it. But also, we really want to help you do this fast and without compromising on quality. So, like, there's a little bit of AI support built in there. You can basically like consolidate all of your existing collateral into certain ways and have that basically just pop out a nearly polished case study. And again, like the robots aren't taking all our jobs. You still need a human to verify that you're going to add the right sources to the right place, and double check and spell check and make sure everything looks good and polish things up at the end. But if time and resources has been a barrier to entry, I think this is a really good example of, we want even the little guys to be able to produce high quality content that is consistent with their brand without feeling like their only option is to do it cheaply or not do it at all.
This one's a really cool biggie too. I love the case studies because we as a content hub builder, we spend so much time building this kind of content, and the fact that it came out as a content type now is going to save our clients and ourselves tons and tons of time. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is maybe like the home run hit of the whole content thing within the content hub is content remix. And again, this just kind of tells you how fast the product team is moving right now, and particularly how fast AI is moving right now. The first version of content remix was launched in what, April, and we're already at V2 here with video remixing. And this is where stuff is really starting to melt my brain. There's so much cool stuff we can do with AI now. So think about like the time and effort and money it takes to produce like a really good piece of long form video content. But then you're like, well, what's next, right? Like, do I have to also pay my videographer to chop that up into clips? And what if I want to turn that into social copy? And like, how much time is that going to take me? So content remix, you start with one piece and it turns it into all of these other supporting pieces. I think it's such a cool part of the tool. And again, when we launched this a couple months ago, a lot of people were thinking in terms of very static pieces of content. It's like, okay, maybe I take that blog post that has been getting a lot of traction, or our pillar page that I think is a really good in-depth summary, and I can turn that into social copy and emails. But now you can do it with videos, and I think that's just so crazy. So starting in either direction, we can turn one piece of content into multiple pieces of content across all of these different channels. It's really some exceptional stuff. And at the same time, too, you may be thinking, well, do I have to have all of this hosted on HubSpot for the work? And the answer is no, right? So maybe you have been writing articles on Medium or LinkedIn or wherever else, right? Just because you don't host it on HubSpot doesn't mean you can't use HubSpot to remix that content and really take your content to the next level. I think this is a really good example of our team being very cognizant of like, look, in a perfect world, everyone would use HubSpot for everything, and Brian and Dharmesh could retire in happiness. But the reality is, people need to use different tools and integrate them with HubSpot, and it all makes sense to have that play together. So really excited to see this.
Hey, Alex, we've got a question. Dave
Yeah.
M from Minneapolis asks, can I take a video that I'm recording on YouTube and put it through Content Remix?
Yeah, so if you have so for the video aspect too, I think you can, like, if you have the video saved in your file manager, that's one really easy way to do that. You can also, yeah, upload that video directly into the content remix tool and execute from there. So there's a little bit of like, I think there's going to be some cases where it like depends on like the file format or where the video is hosted, but in general, like that's the little stuff that the product team is like tweaking right now, is we want like any format, any type, anywhere, any place to be able to play with this tool. Really cool.
Karina asks, what about videos created in Canva? I assume that the answer would be the same.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. If you can get it in HubSpot, then you can leverage it straight from the file manager. And then also, right, even just as far as like text is concerned, like I don't really even know if they're, it doesn't matter if it's WordPress or Wix or Medium or wherever. It's like, if you have an external URL that you can plug in, we can read it. Awesome. Great questions, guys. And thanks for monitoring the chat, Trig. Really appreciate it. All right. We joked about it a couple times. This is actually a really good example of things trickling down from enterprise to pro. When we launched the Content Hub back in the spring, membership content was an enterprise only feature. It's a pro feature now. This particular update is actually more specific to just your ability to report on that, right? Your reporting is super important. You put all this time and energy into creating an audience that has, that access, that prestigious access to your content. You have all these members. I wonder how many people have signed up for this. I wonder how many people have reset their password. There's probably those kinds of questions you're asking, and we want to make it easier for you to answer those questions. So some native reporting for the membership feature in the Content Hub. everyone's favorite thing in the world, user permissions. So if you're an admin, right, this is like a regular part of your experiences. Who has access to what? And I think this is just one more example. We've seen a ton of these over the years, but like the permissions getting more and more granular. People care about security as they should. And the files tool is where a lot of your most valuable assets live. And so being able to control who has access to what, super important. Obviously, so like from an ownership perspective, I want to prevent sort of disasters so that people don't accidentally delete the wrong thing or mess up the wrong thing. At the same time, too, is like the end user. Like if I'm a junior marketer, it's also good for them too. If I don't want to see the things that aren't relevant to me, right? I want my personal experience of HubSpot to be as catered to me as possible. So it does actually benefit them as well. Maybe I'm just trying to spin that, but that's my opinion on permissions. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Couple more quick ones on the Content Hub. Like this is maybe one of those small updates, and some people don't think this is really sexy, but I think again, this is a good example of like we're listening to all the feedback, right? It's a little thing also that like we may have come to expect in other software that we've used all the time, like HubSpot leadership team, HubSpot product team. We are big fans of what a lot of other companies are doing. So sometimes it's little stuff like this, like being able to pin featured content in your content library may seem like a small thing, but it's really only an issue until you go to use it and you realize it's not there. So I'm happy it's there. All right, we're getting into the AI heavy portion of things. I want to make sure we spend plenty of time on this, but here's a really good example of like the AI stuff is new and it's coming thick and fast, but it doesn't mean that we can't still just improve stuff that we launched recently. I think we've all seen an image that's generated by AI, especially in those early days. Like it looks like an AI generated image. So making this better so that like you can feel more like you can trust the images that AI is generating. I think that's a big take home for me. We want like the output to actually be usable and not look chalky and fake. Again, brand identity is important. So big improvements to our ability to have AI generated images for your content. And then this is an AI powered update that's just literally like, how do I make my life easier as a user inside the CRM? If you're in a portal that's a couple years old, you probably have a lot of files, a lot of images saved in there. And so we're using AI just to make the search smarter. So you can find that file that had that name, final, I promise this is the final version. Like, please use this one, don't use that one, whatever it may be. We've all been there. And HubSpot would only be as good as our ability to integrate with other companies and products that we want to use alongside us. So, making a big update to the Amplitude app, really cool. Like the stuff that Amplitude can do, the data that they collect, so powerful. And then marrying that and integrating that with the data you have inside of HubSpot, so important. Also, on just like the content side of things, just Adobe Express, man. Like Adobe is doing really cool stuff with AI powered stuff, and we want to be able to take advantage of that with HubSpot. So, the integration capability is only growing, and this is like a good example of not just that we can integrate with another tool, but we're both kind of starting to make advances in the AI space to make your content life easier. Really, really cool stuff. Use the power of them inside HubSpot. We love that. And last but not least, another one of those integrations. Hey, Jen, I think this is a really cool little update. I personally haven't had as much time to spend playing with this app in particular, but I think it's, again, a good example of HubSpot's power and usefulness does not stop at the border of HubSpot. We want to be able to integrate and extend to other tools. Whew. Lots going on with the Content Hub. I know I teased it. It's finally time. Let's get into
We did it. We made it.
breeze. Woof. All right. So I know this is maybe like a serious note, but like I think this is actually extremely important, right? I would be the first to admit that there's been plenty of AI anxiety in my own personal life, my professional life, just like maybe just even AI fatigue. AI has been in the news sort of constantly for the last several months, and people have some real concerns about it. One of that is like, what are we doing with the data? And I think this is really important. HubSpot is very adamant about this. Your data is not being shared with OpenAI to train their models, right? That's really important. And we also have been putting a lot of thought into like the controls that you have within your own portal to turn certain things on or off. Really important. AI is going to help you, but we want you to be in control of where and how and when, or if at all. So that's really important. Your data is really important, and we want you to feel like you're in control and you can trust. So step back off the soapbox there really quickly. You probably heard a ton about Breeze. Breeze is a couple different things. So we're going to spend the last few minutes here in this webinar really just sort of unpacking what are the three main categories of Breeze, how can I use them, can I get started today? So Breeze Intelligence improves your work, Breeze Copilot works with you, and Breeze Agents work for you, right? Nice little one sentence ways to think about those three things. But again, there's Breeze Intelligence, Breeze Copilot, and Breeze Agents. We're going to go through them in order. Breeze Intelligence, right, unifies and enriches your data. And if for those who've been playing along at home and paying really close attention to HubSpot and the headlines, you might be thinking, is this where the Clearbit acquisition wound up? And the answer is kind of, yeah. So Clearbit is this really awesome data enrichment solution out there in the marketplace. And it tells you a lot. HubSpot doesn't acquire a lot of companies that often, but we acquired them at the end of 2023, and they've been a big reason why we've been able to make this leap into Breeze Intelligence. The main piece of Breeze Intelligence, in my opinion, is this data enrichment piece, right? So there are a lot of those tools out there in the marketplace. They're all really great. I think the real selling point here is that like this is just right inside of HubSpot. Enrich those records where you're working. And you'll notice as well that like there's going to be a new tab on the record. So if I'm looking at a contact, right, like this is Dave Myers contact in my CRM, I can go to the intelligence tab and see, all right, what do we know about Dave? And like, is this a good opportunity to enrich this record with Breeze Intelligence to find out more data? 40 plus pieces of firmographic, demographic, and technographic attributes. That is a mouthful. But the reality is that like with a click of a button, you can find out so much more information about a record, contact, or company. Really great stuff. So just to kind of flesh that out a bit, right? You can enrich contacts, you can enrich companies, you can automate some of this, you can do it in bulk. And I think maybe most important is that there are settings that you can put in place to help kind of keep this under control and make sure that you're only enriching where you want, when you want. With great power comes great responsibility, said Uncle Ben. So we want to make sure that you guys are in full control of your data. So important. And if you've been to Inbound in the past, like there have been years where we've launched like whole new hubs and new SKUs, and Breeze Intelligence is really the only new SKU that we launched this year. So just wanted to flash a little bit of the pricing information here for anyone who's thinking, I want to go out and buy this right away. It's a credit-based system. I won't bore you with all the details today, but again, I think this is an immediate opportunity. It's not tied to a single hub, right? So you don't have to have Sales Enterprise. You don't have to have Marketing Pro. You can buy this as an add-on to any subscription of HubSpot. Super powerful. We also rolled out buyer intent, right? We want to be able to understand who's looking at our website and what does that tell us about their activity on our website, right? And I think intent is such an important piece of this. We talked about this with, you know, the lead scoring, right? Like it's not just their fit on paper, but their engagement with us, right? Like what does their activity on our website tell us about them and inform us in terms of like, are they ready to buy and what should we do next? So I'm going to break this down on the next few slides. Don't worry, I know I'm moving a little faster as we're close to time, but the idea is that it allows you to set up your target markets, right? And again, you'll notice this is available all the way down to free, right? So it doesn't matter what subscription you have, you can start to use Breeze Intelligence and, you know, get those credits. But you are in control of what the target market is. You get to set the definition, right? And then as you're basically training HubSpot and saying, this is what it looks like, can you help us find it? You can refine that even further by specifying company keywords. I think like the example here is kind of a funny one. I was joking about this morning. Like when I think about an industry of like agriculture, and I said that to a farmer, there is so much definition and different nuances within that very broad term. So your ability to set the keywords and really define the scope of what that target market looks like and what intent we're looking for, super, super important. We also have the criteria, right? Like obviously if someone's visiting your pricing page, it's a little bit different than if they're just looking at your homepage. And, maybe if they've looked at it multiple times, that tells us something. So again, like being able to be in control of the market, what the intent criteria is, all that is important and part of this whole process. And finally, orchestration, right? Like, what does this actually look like once we've trained HubSpot? This is what we're looking for, and it starts providing results to you. All right, so what's next, right? Like, how do we want to automate some of this? Like, what does our action look like based on the data that HubSpot is now providing us? So, really cool stuff. I know we're kind of just scratching the surface here, but like Breeze Intelligence is not just, ooh, I want to enrich this record. A lot of it is also getting into what can we learn about who's visiting our website and whether or not they're part of our target market and pulling them into the CRM to take action. And as I alluded to before, the intelligence tab is, it wasn't that long ago that we just had the activity tab. There's a lot of information packed into a HubSpot record these days. And so being able to see like what's going on with their intent and their visits and do they fit our target market? And it's just a whole host of information that's super helpful to us all.
General question on this one, Alex, for the intelligence, like if you're running intelligence on a specific contact, do you consume credits each time you do that, or is it per contact? Like you can re-enrich a contact once you've done it? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so it will be a credit used each time you choose to enrich.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things you can control in the settings, right? So rather than having it like constantly enrich in the background, you can be in control of like, all right, maybe we wait 6 months and then we choose to enrich it if something's changed. But yeah, again, you'll be in full control of that. It's not gonna just like start chewing through these without your no or your say how. So you'll be in control of that. Good question. One that I think is kind of flying under the radar here that still, again, falls under Breeze Intelligence, form shortening, right? Conversion rate optimization. We want to make sure people are being asked less questions, but you still get the answers, right? So as they're starting to tell us their company name, right? Like HubSpot AI in the background is saying, all right, well, we actually know all the answers to the questions about that company. So you don't have to ask them in the form. Just get them to submit the form and we'll provide the rest of the data. I think it's really, really, really cool. Breeze Copilot, this one is short and sweet, I promise. If you've used ChatSpot in the last 12 months, you are now using Breeze Copilot. Copilot is basically ChatSpot rebranded. It is your conversational partner inside of the CRM. So if you're looking at a record and saying, can you just tell me of all the deals associated with this company, how many of them have a dollar value over $5,000, right? Like whatever, just have a conversation with your data through the Copilot. And again, ChatSpot, now Copilot. It's everywhere available in the CRM, available to all users, even down to free. And last but not least, don't tell Dharmesh I saved this for last and we're breezing through it, but the agents are the next step. Honestly, I think this is a big bet that we're making into the future. We're thinking about not just how can an AI do one simple task for me, but how can I build an agent that honestly thinks like a human in some senses and can use multiple AI tools to solve a sequence of tasks, right? It can get pretty sophisticated. It's really cool stuff. HubSpot launched a few of our own, but we also created agents.ai, which is its own agent marketplace. Dharmesh is always doing this crazy stuff, but it's really cool. I think I just right before this webinar, I checked we're up to 41 agents now in the marketplace. There's so much there. So whether it's social media agent, content agent, prospecting agent, and customer agent, these are just the ones that HubSpot built. The rest of our ecosystem is now already out there building even more. And if all of this is hard to wrap your brain around, don't worry. Our like marketing team has put together a really cool use case library. This will be included when we share out the content. See how other people are making that leap into AI. There is so much cool stuff there to take advantage of today. Even a small business can do it. There's a lot of firepower, and we're really just scratching the surface. One last plug, I'd have to do this for our friends at BizzyWeb. They built a really, really cool tool called Data Quick. It's a great name. Check it out. It's awesome, especially if you're like a HubSpot admin. Have you ever wanted to say, can I just see everything inside this portal in an easy to digest format outside of the portal? Make your life so much easier. Check out Data Quick. It's super cool. We love it. Last but not least, we're going to California next year. If you didn't make it to Inbound this year, looking forward to seeing you guys out there on the West Coast. Same HubSpot, going to be 400 plus product updates next year. Don't hold me to that, but we're going out West. Thank you guys so much for attending here today. I know we're a minute over, but
Yeah.
there's just too much to talk about.
Well, I know we can keep going because we're streaming, but for the attendees, Trigby, did any other questions come in that we want to make sure to peg?
There's a lot of questions that are very specific, very tactical. So I think what we'd like to do is if we're going to reach out to people and just say, hey, is there things that we can help? And answer specific ones. Gabe, you want to come off mute and put your question, because you did raise your hand. So we want to give credit for being a good student. Oh, he put his hand down. So
Oh, okay, cool.
Nope, nothing wrong with that.
Sure. So there is a ton here, and just from the feedback in the live version, I think there were some questions about how agent.ai works, and if that's a paid thing, it is free, right? So you can just register and you get credits, and there are Easter eggs and things inside of newsletters and things that you can get to get more credits to start using these, but super cool technology, and it lets you basically build robots using other pieces of robots, right?
Yeah. And you summarized it really well. So it's like free to sign up, and you get some credits to start playing around with and using some of the agents. Again, some of them were built by Dharmesh himself, some of them were built by other HubSpot folks. And then there's a bunch that other people in the community, HubSpot partners, HubSpot customers, HubSpot super fans. So they're already there for you to start to play with. But as Dave mentioned, like, you can kind of start to Frankenstein some of these agents. I don't know. This stuff is really, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but the idea being that like you could take something like the prospecting agent, which you already know what it's good at and like what it's designed to do, and you can kind of start to build agents together to do even more complex things. It feels like one of those 1+1=3 moments where it's just like we're about to really start accelerating the curve. But again, it's agents.ai. It's its own separate agent marketplace. I feel like, if you want to get in on the ground floor on something that Dharmesh thinks is cool, I know I'm biased, but he's got a pretty strong track record of making cool bets on things that become really powerful. It's a really cool place. And if nothing else, you can kind of just go see like what other really cool people, what other really smart people are building out there, and decide if it's good for your business or not.
Cool. Wow. Well, thanks, Alex. This has been tremendous. And
that's it.
For folks that are joining and wanting to know what to do next, you can subscribe and keep up to date at BizzyWeb.com/events. Make sure that you're subscribed to our newsletters and all the other things. And just can't wait to see you. We'll keep you in touch and keep you up to date on all the stuff that's coming up.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for
Thanks,
joining.
Alex.